All right, we're live. How's everyone doing today? It is May 14th, and we are on our fifth episode of our consistency. I don't know if we're calling it consistency, but just I had to think of a name for the chat, so I just said let's continue with consistency, and we're keeping the streak alive. We hit every other week since we've started, so that's commendable. Yeah, a lot of struggles, but we're still here kicking. So
Well, I want to welcome everybody, and again, thank you, Andre, for what you've been doing to make this happen. And a lot of times, in order for us to get exactly where we're trying to be, it takes some fine tuning and some experimentation in order to get exactly where we want to be. Um, and I was in talking about what the topic would be that we would touch upon. I, I've been back and forth. I've got I've got tons of notes on several different subjects, and the direction that I think that I want to flow in is to just talk about some things that are happening that are happening now, and let's just see where we land. You know, uh,
okay.
for one thing, I've got a jersey on, and one of the conversations that's going on now, well, it's not really a conversation for now that hasn't gone on before. When you look at people who are in the NBA playoffs, whether it be Anthony Edwards or whether it be the Joker, the question is often asked, okay, is this version of the NBA better than the other versions of the NBA?
Mhm.
And there's some people who would place Michael Jordan in the GOAT category infinitum, and and then there's others who are saying that based upon some things that are happening with guys that are in the league now, a lot of those records that Michael and others put up are, are going to be crushed.
Mhm.
So, I mean, actually, you and I never really talk sports per se.
Yeah.
Are you much of a sports guy? I don't even know the answer to that.
So I definitely played a lot of sports in high school. Um, Once I got to college, I started falling off. Like I was really into college football. I was really into college football. Then once I got to college, then I kind of fell off of it. Um, I played. I actually got my Archer football shirt
Wow,
on.
what a
That's high.
coincidence!
That's high school. Yeah. So
Wow.
I love basketball. I never played for like my school's team. My dad he had coached a couple of my rec league teams, and we won the championship there. So
Whoa, okay.
yeah, like that was always those are like really big moments for me. Just playing on his team, having him coach our teams up. Like we really didn't even start. Like if you looked at the at the teams we started with, nobody would have ever predicted us to win. But that's something that I always respected about my father. He would coach my sister's softball team.
Wait, so
So
let me back up because
mhm.
I always believe in things being spirit led, and I can't hop over the fact that I was led to go in the direction of sports. I put this jersey on. You've got your jersey on. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
we're
you
connected.
can't really just ignore those things. And
Mhm.
so, what's interesting about what you're bringing up about your dad, I don't know if you saw the Shannon Sharp Charles Barkley interview.
I haven't had the chances. I've seen some highlights from it, but I haven't seen the whole thing.
So one of the things that was really interesting, and I really appreciate what Shannon Sharp is doing because as an athlete, he is showing a lot of former athletes and current athletes that there's life after the playing field, right? That's first of all. And second of all, he seems to have had a way of getting other athletes to be candid in a way that they may not have been in other settings. So I saw now back in the, I guess that would be the 80s when Charles Barkley came into the NBA. If I'm not mistaken, that would be the 80s. I was a big fan of his when he first came into the league. They called him the round mound of rebound.
Yeah.
Because he would grab like 20 boards a game, right? And what was unique about him, and I didn't understand why this was true until the Shannon Sharpe interview, he could dribble. He was this big guy. Well, when I say big, I mean he was portly until he shed the pounds. But he was fast and he was ferocious and he could dribble. And that's the part that was throwing me off because the position that he was playing didn't suggest that he would dribble that way. But it turns out that he had a growth spurt that got him to, I guess, 6'5" or 6'4", wherever he landed. And before he was playing point guard. So that's why he was able to handle the ball so well. But here's a correlation that I want to dig into. He talked about the fact that his father was not really around in his life. And one of the things that was really revealing that he shared is that there was this one time, this one situation where his dad showed up. Now, his dad was absent, pretty much his whole childhood. But something had gone on when I think he was in high school, and I guess he got the call that something happened. He came into town just to lay into Charles. Now, he didn't say whether he got hit or whether it was just a tongue lashing. But that particular incident was devastating to him. And it led him to be a really angry person. It took some time for him to get over that. So when I hear you talk about the impact of your dad and the fact that he coached your team. So around how old were you, or what grade were you in? Do you remember what grade you were in when you guys won the championship? And what position you were playing?
Yeah, I was playing point guard. We won it twice.
Dang,
First year was I want to say the 7th.
I stand corrected.
Yeah. What position did you think I played?
I figured. Well, no. I mean, I didn't realize y'all won the championship twice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So first time was, I want to say it was my 8th grade year in middle school. So we had a team. We were playing in Grayson rec league. The second time was Grayson again. I want to say that might have been my maybe it was 7th in my freshman year. I still have the trophies, but yeah, it was around the middle school, early high school age. Real competitive league. So this is before, because when I first got down to Georgia, I didn't know anything about AAU or anything like that. So I was a little bit like behind the curve in terms of just the competitive basketball. So later on, I would, dabble into AAU and everything, but it was, people have been, especially down here in Georgia, people have been working since they were, in elementary, crafting their skills. So, definitely big difference in people who were, getting kind of professional training. I would just, I played at my neighborhood actually had like a community basketball hoop. They took it down because of just fights breaking out and just other shenanigans and stuff. So, but that's really where I learned to play. I played with, I met so many great people playing up there. That was probably the closest thing that you had to like a New York basketball court in our area. So, people from different neighborhoods would come and play basketball there for hours. So I'd just be out there. I was around a lot of older guys there too. Um, People who played for real teams were out there, so it was real competition. But it was always a good time. Um, yeah, but middle school, that the first championship we won it the first year that we had actually like played and like entered the league. So that's why I want to say it was like seventh grade and I think seventh grade and ninth grade were the years that we won. Um, and yeah, it was pretty long. I mean, it wasn't a really long season, but just the teams that we started with, nobody like they have, especially in a place like Grayson, where there's people who've kind of grown up there for their whole life. So, they've been in the rec leagues for a long time and they can kind of get their chance to pick who they want to be on their teams and everything. So we kind of, well, I think the first time my dad was really assistant coaching. And then actually, he might have been assistant both times. No, I think the third time he was an assistant. So I think he was assistant coach, head coach, and then assistant coach. So.
Okay. So let me ask you this. We can see right now Prime on a very, very international stage, showing us what it looks like to coach two of his sons, which is kind of unprecedented, you
Mhm.
know. And often wonder what that would look like to have your own father as your coach. So, what was that like? Because you've got these other guys on the team who are vying for playing time, just like you.
Mhm.
Your father is the coach. I mean, what was that like? How was that? How did that all work?
So yeah, the first team he wasn't the head coach. He just kind of started helping out. So it was never anything, and it was since it's rec league teams, everybody's guaranteed some
Some
playing
playing time.
time. Yeah, so um, I I mean for me it was just I guess he always just had an actual game plan that he would apply to the game. So and I think that was more than other teams were probably doing at that time. So we would come out with an idea, or he always helped us play to our strengths. So we had like two big guys down low who were really slow, but he was just like, you guys just focus on rebounds, what I mean, nothing else. So everyone kind of had their own position, like set positions and roles that they were playing within the team. So, and I think just as uh, me, I was just always a good role player. I think that was always my strength. I never really, I don't need to drop 30 a game. I do my thing, do my assists. Or because I think really in rec, and even in rec league, it's kind of simple in terms of like you need someone who can get the ball up and down the court reliably. You need two or three plays that you can kind of get some uh consistent buckets off of. You have to have like a main scorer. Um, and so yeah, we just always had strategies going into the game, and then really once it was really more once we got to the playoffs where everything that we did over the course of the season kind of started to pay off. So we had a couple of upsets because we weren't the number one seed going into the tournament, but by the time we got to play some of the better teams, we played them already, and we had made adjustments, and so we were able to pull it off like that.
So one of the things you said, a number of things that I think is important because you got all kinds of people who may be watching this. You might have those people who are coaching, hoping to coach. And one of the first things you said when you talked about what made your dad's coaching successful is he always came into it with a plan.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of the mentality that if you're going to do something, do it, not just half-heartedly do it because time is precious. It's not one of those things that we're going to get back. And I think sometimes with rec ball, and believe it or not, even with AAU, sometimes you see a mentality where a coach or a team might put together a group of talented athletes, and you get the impression that once the game comes, that they just kind of roll the ball out, and
Mhm.
and so for those parents who may be watching this, the first thing I would say, and by the way, I am an AAU parent. My son Asa, he is, um, well, he's about to graduate from high school, but he's a baller, and he'll be playing in college, and he if things go the way we plan, he'll play professionally. But one of the things that is interesting as a parent is sometimes you might find yourself on a team, and some parents are not as versed as far as the game and trying to figure out who to align with as a coach. So yeah, you're trying to pick this coach. The guy seems like a nice guy, cares about the children. However, you also want your child to be in a situation where if he's got potential, he can best show off that potential. And usually if there's a plan, then that opportunity arises more. So if you're trying to pick a coach to align with, then one of the one of the things you want to look for is not just somebody that's going to respect your children. That's important, right?
Mhm.
You also want somebody that will show up with a plan. Now, there's something else you said that's important because, again, hopefully we'll have some young cats. I don't know if they even use the word cats anymore. But anyway, we're just
It's fine. We know what you're talking about when, when
it's,
you
it's all
when
good.
older people say that.
It's all
So,
good. And
mhm.
so, of course, sometimes I use certain statements just to do that. Right? There are a lot of guys who have talent, and I always say this, and I said this to my son all the time. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about Bill Russell, Julius Irving, Colin Catwell. He's not playing much these days. Um, goodness, the guy I'm thinking about, the, the the championship quarterback for the
Yeah.
Chiefs. What's his name again?
Pat Mahomes,
Yeah, I don't know why it's
Patrick.
in my head. It's crazy. My point is, with all of these champions,
Mhm.
what you will notice is true about all of them. Going back to this concept of consistency, because it's if we're going to talk about winning and championship and being successful, you can't avoid that word consistency.
Right.
And so I'm curious, even with that rec team, and I'm guessing that you won't be giving away the secret sauce. I don't. I'm that might not be coaching anymore.
Yeah, we ain't coaching no more.
Is there anything that you can say? Okay, we did this all the time, and even now, years later, and looking at the success that you all did have, you can say, okay, I know that this one or two things that we did all the time gave us an edge. What might those be?
I would say I'd have to really stick it to role playing because even as I watch basketball today, that's kind of how. Because I was watching, okay, watching the Wolves in Denver. We was watching that game the other day. So just a quick backstory. I've been a Timberwolves fan for my whole life. So I was a KG. all-time favorite player of mine.
Wow. Okay.
So, but
So how did you feel when he left the Timberwolves and
I
went to
followed him.
Boston?
I
Oh, you
followed him. I followed him. The way people follow LeBron, I follow KG right to the Celtics.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, I'm really not. I'm not a. That's when it comes to sports. I'm not a team person. I'm an individual person. So
Okay. Yeah.
I like my players. So after once KG left, and I was a Rondo stan. Like Rondo is my favorite point guard. Right now, I'm Kyrie. Kyrie, because I like people's games. Like I always loved Kevin Garnett's intensity.
Oh gosh.
Um, I love Rondo's intelligence and Kyrie's skills is
Ooh.
top level. So those are the things that when I'm watching basketball, that's what I'm not really paying attention to who's winning. I want the player who I'm watching to have a good game, or I want to watch them do what they do best. So back to consistency. Kevin Garnett always brought the intensity that you needed. And I mean, I think that's because that's the type of player I was. Like, I was getting rebounds, I was pressing the ball. Like, I'm a huge defender. So, um, those are some of the things that we played to. Like me knowing that, um, I always just kind of did like I would press the whole game, or just do certain things that would throw the other team off that they might not have anticipated or seen against another team. And so I think leaving that mark, like the whole team would kind of had their own or somebody had their own role to play in that regard. So some people would get in the rebound, so I think everyone had their role, and playing with a certain intensity always kind of helped us, get the job done.
You know what's interesting is in watching a lot of different sports and actually being an athlete myself. And I'm like you, I always like to play defense. Now, in basketball, you want to score. In football, you like to score. But in football, growing up, my favorite player, my favorite all-time football player was a defensive player. And I
Mhm.
think he may have revolutionized defense in football perhaps more than anybody else in a lot of respects, and that's Lawrence Taylor.
Mhm.
I'll never forget as a young guy coming into the living room, and every 2 seconds they kept bringing up this guy, Lawrence Taylor. And when he first came to the Giants, and they were built. Now he's the first defensive player that I know of. Now, of course, there's other people who are more deeper in the history. There's some people who are as deep into the history of football and so forth as you are with the music. So some people will perhaps counter me, but I don't know. I'm not sure how successful they will be because usually with football teams, everybody knows. Usually, you build a football team around the quarterback,
Mhm.
and then maybe secondarily a dynamic running back, but usually it's the QB, right?
Mhm.
I can say with my full chest that that Giants team that Lawrence Taylor played for, they built that team around him,
Mhm.
and that was the first time I saw that. And so the other thing that's interesting about the stance that you took as a player, which as a basketball player, I used to love locking my man down. And then I also like those players. One of the things I try to teach my son is to have a very diverse game. Now, of course, the today's players are definitely, as an aggregate, more skilled than
Mhm.
players in the past. I mean, the amount of high level scores that we have today versus yesterday, it's almost incomparable. And I would tell my son that you want to have a game that allows you to get out there and shoot threes. But even with someone like Steph, one of the things that people miss is that Steph is very fundamentally sound. And I remember when
Mhm.
I watched Steph in college, he became famous for shooting threes in the NBA, but he was famous in college. And right now, the name of his college is escaping.
Davidson.
Davidson, right? Thank you. Of course, he was even a little quicker when he was in college,
Mhm.
but he was known for taking his man to the hole just as much as he was known for shooting that that jumper in college. And so my point is that as an offensive player, if you got a good mid range, if you could take your man to the basket and then you could shoot a three, we're talking about somebody that really can't be stopped because
Mhm.
you can score from anywhere, you know. And when you have so many players like that in the game, it's very difficult to win in any sport. Now I haven't been fortunate to watch a lot of hockey, but I bet you that whether it be hockey or soccer, I know for basketball and football, if you want to win, you have to be able to play defense. And you rarely will see a team win championships if they don't have defense as a part of their identity.
Mhm. That actually goes back because that was actually the point I was going to with the Minnesota and Denver game.
Yeah.
So Minnesota got out in front because they were playing phenomenal defense early on in the series.
Hmm.
They were swarming to the ball. They were playing textbook defense, and I love to watch that game. And then that allowed for Anthony Edwards to do his thing on offense, and for them to get the win. So the past two games, uh, I think game two they were locking Murray up. So Murray was in jail that game, but yeah. So now I think when because Rudy Gobert was out for game two, and I think that kind of had them mentally like, okay, we gotta really go hard. Then game three he came back. I think they said they had like a little bit of a break as well, so just kind of threw off their momentum. But even with Rudy being a top defensive guy, I saw Minnesota get away from what was working best for them, which was pressing the whole game. They pressed Murray from the time he touched the ball. He was getting frustrated. And then, the game yesterday, I'm seeing or not yesterday, whenever that game was, um, Timberwolves are the one. Well, mainly Carl Anthony Towns getting frustrated with no calls and stuff. That was something I never called asked for a call. They called it. They called it. They didn't. Then that's just what it is. Because you know they're not gonna change the call anyway. Like especially not in high school or anything.
Right.
So there's no real use in arguing with these grown refs. Like
That's right.
you're a little kid.
That's
They're
right.
not trying to hear you say that you didn't.
And not to cut you off,
Mm,
but what's interesting about what you're saying is that me watching players today, you would be appalled. I don't know how much you get to see rec ball today, and how much they try to emulate that aspect of what they see from these professional ball players, and it's useless because you're trying to get to where these professional players are, and you're right. These grown refs, at most, if you keep it up, you get a tech, and you might get tossed from the game
mm,
because you're just you're just a child to them,
right.
trying to get there wherever there is for you. So you said some things, definitely.
Yeah. So the today's game, I really don't like any. They have the replay too. That's been I don't like how much that's being used. See, I really haven't been watching. I stopped watching kind of professional sports a while ago, but
I
I
could
have
I could
recently.
tell I could tell that something was going on because when I went down this lane, I could tell like, okay, that's why I said now that we're talking, of course, I remember way back when we first met, we talked a little sports, but of
Mhm.
course, most of the time we've always talked music,
Right.
so not a lot of sports.
I do love sport. Like I love watching sports. Is just I think maybe more of the commercial. Like when people were talking about, I was looking at the NFL. that was kind of started my off putting of like professional sports. Because then, well, once I stopped watching NBA, then I really went back and started watching high school basketball. So I was very like, I know a lot of the young people coming up into the draft. Like I was watching uh, Jalen Green early on in his career, Josh Christopher. So a lot of those guys, I watched them play in high school because that's when they had all the highlights, and I'm like, oh, this is some great. Or you could just find it on YouTube. So find some great basketball, no extra stuff coming in, and all of that. So I I think really all sports it's kind of more marketing now. So that's kind
Wow,
of
that's a
why
big
I don't.
statement.
Yeah, that's why I'm not really the biggest fan of it, or it's not as pure anymore, I guess, until it gets to the playoffs. So I really can do without. And now they have all the betting going on with it, which I'm not a fan of. But
So I'm glad you brought that up. And
mhm,
I really appreciate how when we just let the spirit lead, and I'm grateful to Yahweh because it seems like with each one of these conversations, it just takes us someplace.
mhm,
So you brought it up, and I can't let that go. Um, I'm going to come back to it because actually there were two things that you said that are worth commenting on. Um, so definitely gather your thoughts on the whole betting thing. I'm going to come back
mhm.
to
I
that.
got a whole lot to say about
Yeah, I'm going to come back to that.
it.
But
Mhm,
I want to go back to what you were saying. Oh, you said this. You said three things. Okay. Um, so when you were talking about your own experience with the game, I think you used the word textbook and textbook in terms of some teams going to the textbook. And with the college game, part of the reason why teams like Princeton have had the success that they've had has a lot to do with them sticking with a textbook, even though for the longest we know that the most talented players often don't end up at Princeton.
mhm,
And so where I was going, and part of the reason why, and a lot of young people don't understand this about Kyrie, but part of the reason why Kyrie ended up at Duke, you can trust me. I put all toes down on this one. If he played at Duke for Coach K,
mhm,
you better believe that Kyrie was fundamentally sound. So you see all that, fantastic dribbling that he does, it's because, and I tell the young people this all the time, whether it's Steph or Julius or Michael or any of the flamboyant players, the best ones of them, that stuff that you're seeing is laying on top of sound fundamentals, really sound fundamentals.
every time.
And I know that, I actually let's go there because I think this is a great conversation for you to talk about one of the initiatives that you took the initiative to push in the community as far as trying to give young cats a chance to get away from negativity and when you I don't want to you know what I'm talking about
Mhm.
with the cord and all that kind of stuff. You want to talk about how that came about and what led you to lead that initiative?
You saying with the basketball court, or
Yeah,
yeah,
the
mhm,
basketball court that
tried
spearheaded.
to put up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, back when I was living in the Lakewood area, I was in an apartment complex where we had like it was a parking lot where you kind of park behind the townhomes. So one day I bought a basketball hoop and put it up because there was a lot of kids in the neighborhood, but there was nothing for them to do. So just at that time, I was also looking for something to do myself, and I was like, a basketball court would be the perfect thing, or I just felt like it would be, something great for the community, at that point in time, because there were a lot of kids just kind of hanging out at the. There was like a convenience store like right in the front of the neighborhood or across the street from the front of the neighborhood, and yeah, where I always say, kids who, if you find people who are on the corner outside of a gas station, they're just kind of lost and they're outside looking for directions. Like, they're not necessarily looking to get into trouble. They normally find themselves in trouble because they don't know where to go, but they're really just going to the only place where they see people outside of maybe their house. Maybe so, they're hoping that they find an opportunity. That's the only place they know to go to find an opportunity. So um, I was just thinking, like, without them having anything to do, they're just going to end up doing either harm to each other or harm to someone else, because all of that one emotion, aggression, and just mix that with being lost, and now you don't know who you're going to end up taking all that out on. So I tried to put up a basketball hoop behind my apartment building, and the neighborhood it came. Yeah, they actually did threaten to evict me for it. So I took it a couple of I took it to the people. There was no direct rules saying that you couldn't put it there. They were trying to put some other like loopholes. Um,
What was
saying
there?
that,
So let me back up. There's a couple of things that I want to drill down on,
mm,
because way back in the day when I was a student leader, one of the things that I would encourage people to do is figure out what you can do, because you always have those people who will make the excuse, well, you know what, I'm not really trying to lead, but we can all lead from where we're at. And we lead by doing what we see needs to be done. So
mhm,
you yourself said, okay, I wouldn't mind playing some basketball. And I see these young people with not something that is driving their attention in a particular positive way. So maybe this will give me an opportunity, and not to put words in your mouth, but
mm,
maybe this will be an opportunity for me to influence them. If nothing else, it'll distract them away from potential harm. Okay. So
mm,
I want that to resonate, because there may be some people, and I hope people will share this with others. There may be some people who are frustrated with what they see going on in their neighborhood. And I always say, okay, what can you do? What is it that you see that you can do? I've had the opportunity as a coach and a teacher to talk to groups. And what I would say to the men, sometimes it's numerically, there have been times when it might be 90% men in the group.
mhm,
And there's always those guys who, and you might be one of those guys, there's always those guys who, when they come around the block, for whatever reason, maybe it's because of the whip that they drive, that they attract the attention of the young people. Maybe it's their swag, maybe it's the way they dress, maybe it's their jewelry. Of course, Prime, he's famous for admitting that part of the reason why he wears the jewelry he wears is because it's a way for him to connect, with the next generation. So
right,
whatever that it factor is, at a minimum, a guy might say, okay, for whatever reason, these shorties, they gravitate to me. So what is it that I can say? What is it that I can do to motivate them to to be positive? Even if it's nothing but saying, hey, you know, you need to stay in school,
mm,
because if you an OG that they admire, and believe it or not, to somebody that's nine, you an OG. You
mm.
might
Oh yeah,
you might.
I'll for sure know that. I'll give you that.
So everybody, and so that's why I always appreciated when you shared that back when we first started talking, that you had taken that initiative. That was impressive to me. So what was the complex's justification for not wanting to give you permission to put this court up? Because I'm baffled. What's the problem?
So I think it was probably up for maybe a week. And then I think one of the neighbors had complained because there weren't even really, it wasn't like people flooding there or anything. Now I guess now that I'm older, I mean, I can understand from the perspective of a neighborhood or just liability reasons. So, but I did also offer to just let them have it and put it where they wanted to and just it be a commune because I was like, it doesn't need to just be behind my house or behind our in our area. I was like, put it because they did have like a playground, something like that. When I was asking, because I did meet with like the or a representative, because that complex actually owns a couple of different complexes in Georgia. So there was actually one that they owned over by my parents' house in Lawrenceville. So I was doing all this research and just finding out things. And, it's just not, they just really don't care to make it any type of external community factors, which kind of, and at that time it really did open my eyes just to, you know, that's really what made me want to, buy a house because I was like that was something that frustrated me so much. I was like, yeah, I'm not trying to live on anyone else's property or live by other people's rules and stuff like that. So, and I was like one of the first things I had to buy when I got my house. I was like, I need a basketball court or just a place where I can, do my thing on. Um, but yeah, their justification was just like, yeah, liability issues. They were saying they were trying to use uh I forgot, they were saying something about debris on like the back porch or something. That was kind of the loophole that they used to get. There was nothing explicitly saying that I couldn't put a basketball goal there. And especially when I was like, I'll take it down when it's not being used because it's almost like a grill almost. So um but yeah, I think at that time, if I'm remembering correctly, I met with this lady who was over them, and I was pleading to him because I'm just like, at this time, the neighborhood wasn't really the greatest. There was, I wouldn't say there was high crime rate, but there was crime in the area. Kids getting into mischief and just doing other things. So I was advocating for just give them something to do. If you're not gonna, I mean, I was like, if not a basketball court, what else can we provide to kind of give some other options. I did a lot in that neighborhood because that was when I started doing I was doing free tutoring at the little clubhouse center over there. So I was trying to do a lot. I did care. I still do care about that community a lot. But it also showed me that the people who were there, I'm like, if you're not trying to get out personally, then they're not trying to get you out either. Like they want the people there to kind of just be where they're at socially, economically. There was no real push to improve any of the conditions for the people living there. Um, I don't know if adding a basketball court would have just added more work for them to do. But there, you know, I can see, I can see now, like, as I've gotten older and just kind of understand laws and regulations and stuff like that. I think when I was looking into it, really, I was like, oh, this is really on like it was some type of government, like the government, like, and then they were going into different funding. It was a lot of just different talks about it. So, but they basically were just like, we're not really even trying to have this conversation. It's like if that's something that you want to do, then you can get out. And if you, so that was really my only option. So,
Well,
uh,
I applaud you for those efforts, and I'm glad that it didn't dissuade you from still wanting to be a factor in our neighborhoods. I'm very cautious about using the word community. I probably mentioned this before because
Mhm.
we we've still got some work to do to get back to that particular word, community.
Yeah,
I want
totally.
to I wanted to ask you a question because you were talking about purity in sports. And of course, you noticed that there was a whole lot of excitement surrounding the women's basketball game as of late,
Mhm.
and the success that Caitlin Clark has brought to the game,
Mhm.
and of course the what South Carolina basketball
Uh,
is doing with
mhm.
Coach Dawn
Mhm.
and the success she's had. Where I'm going with that is that some people find themselves gravitating to the women's game because some people say that there's still more of a semblance of purity in their game. And I wonder with the rise of Caitlin whether we should feel like that's in jeopardy now.
I mean, that goes back to marketing is kind of what kills all the purity out of things. That goes for hip hop, that goes for sports. So whenever you do have an outside entity trying to sell it, then that's where the purity goes. Because like you can't really put a price on the purity of certain things, but they're going to try to. And so that's, once you get the endorsements and just other people's hands into the pot, and like with so many people being there's so many influence things that influence the game at this point that you know the right amount of money can change an outcome of something. And so right there, that's where you lose the true purity of the game. So that goes for if you can pay the refs enough money to, give you a couple of calls here or there, or, you know, just get the right mark. Cause I mean, I'm of the belief, I don't know. Have you seen that Will Smith movie Focus? He
No.
was like, okay, that was, he was playing like a con artist basically. He was doing sports betting and he was just really into rigging a game, like rigging games and stuff like that. So, but in that movie, he was just showing how all of these little psychological tricks can go into, just dealing with people, dealing with refs. And so I'm big on psychology. And so I understand that. Um, and I'm big on understanding what propaganda is. So I know that a team that's kind of being revered as America's team, has a slightly better chance, and you kind of put them against villains and stuff. So everything kind of has to have a narrative. Like when I pay attention to basketball, I'm more paying attention to the narrative. That's why I don't pay attention to the team directly. I'm looking more at the individual, but I know that it's playing into a larger narrative that they're trying to display. So um, there's I'm not gonna, I was gonna say where I started learning about propaganda. I'm just gonna briefly mention it. It was a documentary on YouTube called "The Century of Self." I
Hmm.
don't want to go into the deep. That's a really good documentary that talks about how public relations came about in America. It was kind of spearheaded by Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And
Hmm.
so Edward Bernays is actually coined as the father of what is it, public relations, PR.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, once seeing that, then I kind of looked at America differently, just in general, because or just how things are consumed. So I'm very mindful that, you know, and they introduced public relations with good ideas in mind. Like, they wanted people to stop the war, but the fact is that you're still manipulating and kind of brainwashing people into kind of thinking in one direction. And so I see that a lot now, whether it be on Twitter, whether it be on YouTube, the commercials that we watch. So everything is kind of feeding into these narratives that people in higher places kind of have control with, and then mainly when I say higher places, people with money who need something to happen. So, but I don't want to get too too deep into that. We can definitely touch on that a little bit later. But yeah, propaganda is that's another thing that kind of takes the purity out of things, because now it's no longer people going on their gut feeling. It's kind of more, if you can convince enough people that the sky is yellow, then you're crazy if you're if you're in the minority saying that the sky is blue. So it doesn't, and that's when we kind of have to fight with, when we're dealing with reality. So people reacting to real life situations, or people reacting to created fictional situations that are happening. And
So one of the things that you make me think about, and I like how you laid a palette for me to talk about this part of current events. And obviously, we won't have time to drill down on this, but one of the candidates for president will and is someone who is considered a conspiracy theorist.
mm,
Robert Kennedy Jr. is considered a conspiracy theorist, mostly because, and maybe I'm showing my hand a little bit, mostly because he had the guts to call out those people who were complicit in the ricocheting of COVID-19 all over the world.
mhm,
And so when we talk about propaganda, that's why you will hear me call what we experienced the pandemic.
mhm,
Now, back when we were in the thick of it, I mean, we're still dealing with it. There's still, unfortunately, people who are going to the hospital and so forth with the virus. And of course, the powers that be who have been pushing these shots 2 and 3 times a year, it's very important that the virus sticks around. So the one thing that I will say is that when people go to the polls, it's important to listen carefully, because I never forget listening to a man who won the office of presidency fairly recently, and as a former political science minor, I know a little bit about that arena. And as I was listening to this guy who would become president, I said, "Wow, this is what they call rhetoric." In other words, he was his mouth was moving
mhm,
clearly, and he was getting a lot of response for the things that he was saying, but he actually wasn't saying anything. There was no substance. It was pure propaganda.
mm,
And so my hope is that people will do some investigation. Don't just take what certain people say because they've got a name brand for face value. Because the first people that they're going to use as tools of propaganda are those name brands. In order for them to push whatever the agenda is that they are trying to push, they're going to find those people. That's the reason why there's some sports figures that you will see grinning with a soft drink that they don't even drink,
mm,
because some of those athletes, they can't be superior drinking that. They don't put that in their body.
Mhm.
And some of them should, I mean, that's a whole nother that's a
Like,
whole nother conversation on how moral that is
mhm.
to promote a product that you would never actually consume because it goes against what you call fuel for your body. Your body as an athlete, your body's a machine.
Mhm.
Some of these athletes who have been at work in their sport for 20 some odd years, you mean to tell me they drink Sprite or whatever the brand is?
Whatever they pushing at that time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
whatever the brand is, right? So no, they're not. And I hate that that slipped out because I wasn't trying to advertise for any particular brand.
Mhm. No, but
When
that
you
I
get
mean that goes into what you were saying when we were talking about Drake and Kanye. I know that one kind of got a little bit messed up in terms of like the video streaming, but um, that goes back into my point of what Drake represents and what Kanye represents in terms of independence and of being kind of a how would I put it, like more of a, I guess, a corporate sweetheart. I put it like something like that. So um, a lot of the things that Drake stands for and represents, he might not be. He's big on the betting too. Like a lot of and I see a lot of just podcasts in general, kind of promoting the prize picks and the quick, just easy gambling. Like it's I think to get if we want to get into that topic again, I think the ease in which or how simple they've made it to bet now is a huge problem. I mean, I see a lot of people. It's hard for people to recognize that they have a gambling problem right now because of how how much it is like a video game. So a lot of people feel like they're playing even though they're losing real money. Um, and it's kind of that mentality where they're like, "Oh well, I'm gonna hit again, or I'll eventually hit," and then they're off by one or two rebounds, and those parlays are really hurting some people these days. And I really don't like the direction it's going, simply because there's a lot of people who appear to be making money with it. And so the more people it seems that are making money, the more people are going to try it and, really rely and harp on some of that. Like, I mean, I'm someone who, like, I watch I'm analyze sports more so than watch them. So I mean, I think I'm pretty accurate if I'm watching a game, I can pretty much determine how a game is gonna go. But then, of course, refs interfere, or some just different things happen, and then those are the points when I'm like, okay, that's not how things typically go, and that's where I would be like at a loss when it comes to gambling. So that's something that and the reason I've never been into gambling is because I can see it just being something that can take your emotions from 0 to 100 really quickly. You can. I don't like anybody who. I'm of the idea that if you're trying to bet me or gamble with me or something, that you're not really my friend, because somebody's coming out the loser, and if we're friends, then we wouldn't want to do that. But I guess when it comes to sports betting, you don't feel like anybody. You just feeling like it's all ups, but they don't understand how the game works, how the house always wins in the end, and in this case, the app always wins in the end. So,
Dre. To be honest with you, I'm so glad that this topic came out and only I'm always going to give the ultimate credit to the spirit for how things will bend. This particular topic of betting is so huge. Honestly, I think that at best we can just scratch the surface of it. And I think both of us probably should do a little more research on it and really hit it the next time, because this is huge. This is huge on so many different levels.
It is.
Um, it's interesting that you mentioned Drake and the whole and his role in this, because of course when we talk about influence and influencers, we know that hip hop and people who are leading in hip hop would be in a position to lead, right? Interesting enough, you were the first person to put me on to one of the jabs in the
Kendrick and
Kendrick and Drake
Mhm.
sparring match. And I picked my son up from school because my youngest son, the one I was talking about earlier, he's graduating from high school, but my middle son, he goes to school in Kentucky. So I picked him up this weekend. And on the ride back, we've been talking about, the Kendrick and
Mhm.
Drake deal. And every chance I get to talk to someone different about it and get their take, I will get it. I was talking to this one guy, and I'm setting it up to to say something and then get your feedback.
Mhm.
I brought it up to one guy in an Uber because he happened to be playing uh, rap on my ride, and I said, "Hey man, how do you feel about the whole Drake Kendrick thing?"
Mhm.
He said, "Well, he said I think it can be good for hip hop, you know." He said, "But at the same time, as much as I would like to think that it is designed to sell more streams, I guess we should say. I don't even know if it's
Records.
appropriate to say that people sell records anymore, right?
Mhm.
Even though we know there's this movement to bring back vinyl, but that's an aside." He said, "But the thing that is throwing him off about this beef is that it seems, especially from Kendrick's angle, it seems to be personal. Some
Mhm.
of the things that he has suggested about Drake makes it seem very personal, especially when he brought up Harvey Weinstein. Now, I don't know. I'll be honest and tell you that there's a few of the current rappers that I I, I know. You got a little baby. There's a few of them. There's a plethora of them out there, but I only really
Mhm.
know a few of them, right?
Right.
Um, but I know of Harvey Weinstein, and so
Mhm.
when Kendrick suggested that there was a connection between Drake and him,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna park that statement there, and
Mhm.
then say this. This may be bombastic because, of course, usually when there's a rap battle, which technically this is,
Mhm.
the question is who won or who's winning. Now, this may shock you.
Mhm.
Thanks to my son, now I've heard all of them. You let me hear the first one by Kendrick. I hadn't heard any of Drake's stuff,
Okay.
but my son brought me up to date. I've heard
Mhm.
all of them now. I'm going to say that for me, as far as the content, the delivery, and everything, I felt like Drake was ahead, right?
Mhm.
And then the last couple of tracks that Kendrick put down, which were really hard hitting,
Mhm.
I felt like I feel like this is me personally. I feel like it's kind of like a tie now, you know. And I
Mhm.
know for some people, even my son, he feels like Kendrick d- demolished Drake.
Mhm.
I don't really feel that. I feel like Drake, Kendrick really gained a lot of ground with the last two.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put my mic down. I've said a lot, and now
No,
I want to hear what you got to say.
that's actually very interesting coming from you, but in a because I'm of the I think rap beef wise, I think that Kendrick delivered in a way that people weren't anticipating him to deliver. So I think that that more is more why people are kind of declaring him the winner.
Okay.
Um, and I also feel like I think the reason people consider Drake losing is because he was fighting so many people. Like he was really, he had like five people who he was aiming at every time. So, and people are giving him credit for what he did on Family Matters because he was rapping on that. So, and I look at it, I think Drake he didn't have the best strategy to go up against Kendrick. So technically, I do feel like he kind of lost, especially after, because to me it was like that came out. Some people like to say first person shooters what started it. I'm gonna give a real quick recap for people who don't know. First person shooter was a song on Drake's album For All the Dogs, which featured J. Cole. And on that album, on that song, J. Cole had kind of declared the big three as being Drake, Kendrick, and himself. Then following, I know we got all into this the last time, but Metro Boomin and Future, Southern from the South, dropped the album called "We Don't Trust You," which is people say subliminally saying we don't trust you, Drake. so there,
Mm.
so there's all of that, and then on that album, because there were a couple throughout the album, it was pretty much dissing Drake. So I would say it's pretty safe to say that it was a Drake diss album. Um, on that album, there was a song called "Like That," where Kendrick then said, "There's no big three, it's just me. Don't."
That's right. Now see, I'm glad that you are revisiting that because for some people, when you said it last time, well, at least for me, I didn't have the same level of context that I have
Mhm.
now that I've heard all of the battle,
Right.
tracks. So
Yeah.
it was important for you to say that. Okay. All right,
Mhm.
go ahead.
So yeah, he says that on that song, and it's kind of says a lot on. He doesn't say too much on that song, but um, regardless, that prompted a response from J. Cole. J. Cole dropped the album, or I guess you could call it an album these days. It was more of a mixtape to me. And then on there, he had a song called 7 Minute Drill, where he was dissing Kendrick. But he was mainly taking shots at Kendrick's discography throughout the years and saying that he hasn't dropped a lot and that even the ones that he has dropped aren't as good as people claim them to be. So he, a couple of days later, he had
Now
ended
I
up.
can't let this pass. I have to ask you because
Okay.
you're kind of in that space where you're a commentator.
Mhm.
So, what's your take? Was J. Cole right? Did those Kendrick albums deserve the acclaim that it got, or was J. Cole right?
So for me, I'm not even the biggest Kendrick fan. My favorite rapper is in Kendrick's camp. His name is Absol.
Okay.
So when it comes to, and that's probably my biggest issue with Kendrick being where he's at because I do personally feel like what people revere about Kendrick is kind of a watered down version of Absol. That's just my personal opinion in terms of what I'm looking for when I'm listening to hip hop, whether it be subject matter. I'm looking for somebody to kind of put me on or make me do some work. I like to listen with intention and do a little bit of work. So if you're making me look up things like, so what Kendrick's been doing with his previous diss tracks, I like that. I really like forcing people to go deeper than just understanding the rhymes, right? Now with that being said, so I do think Kendrick has some phenomenal albums, and I think that I think that they're really. I understand the level in which he's hitting. You know what I mean? So for the audience, for certain things to be mainstream digestible, he is the best person to do that. And I think for people listening on that level, then those albums are amazing. Like there's not an album that I don't like by Kendrick, honestly. The last one was probably my least favorite that he's dropped. But I'm
what was
also
the name of that one again?
The Big Step, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. And you know, for me, I think I've been listening to hip hop for so long. It's not necessarily teaching me anything anymore. So I think maybe if I was younger, you know, maybe it would have taught me a couple of more things. But it's nothing new to me at this point. So that's kind of the point I'm at with when it comes to certain hip hop. But with that being said, J. Cole's projects have never done that for me personally. I do like J. Cole. I think J. Cole is technically one of the best rappers. Similar to what I said with Eminem.
Now, let me say this. Now, of course, I keep saying this. So, you know, eventually, hopefully people will watch this and pick up steam. I always have to put this disclaimer in. My knowledge is limited. Okay. Mm-hmm. When I say limited, I mean as far as all the different artists that are out there in the current game, you know. But what I can say, I think the title of it, of the song that I play for my son, because I'm always saying to my two sons that, you know, when I listen to rap, you need to take me somewhere. You need to, like you said, you need to either teach me something, you need to tell a story. Mm-hmm. I don't just want to hear you talk about creating drugs, distributing drugs, running women, and it not have any cohesion to it at all. Mm-hmm. You just throwing stuff out. That's not, to me, that doesn't take the game anywhere. You just after the bag, period.
Right.
You know. I heard this track that I let my son hear on the way back, because there were certain tracks that he was trying to play, and I said, okay, I can't. Now I know you and I have been back and forth. Mm-hmm. Even, you know, you told me that you messed with Sexy Red a little bit. Mm-hmm. Okay, so anyway, certain songs I wouldn't let him play, right? Uh-huh. And I said, okay, listen to this. There's this track that Wale and J. Cole did together. To me, I think it's titled My Boy, or My Boy, or Your Boy.
Okay, I think
I'm sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go back and listen to it. To me,
I think I do know.
To me, that's one of the best rap songs in the modern era. I mean, to me, when you talk about rapping. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know where Wale fits into your
Wale, that go back into my colorism, because Wale was my favorite back when Drake was coming up. Drake and J. Cole. I don't want to get all the way into this, but Wale was always his mixtape More About Nothing. That was something that I played when I'm in the locker room getting ready for a football game. I'm playing More About Nothing. And he had Attention. He's one of my favorite.
Wale is a
MCs.
problem. That thing that him and J. Cole did together, I said, son, I said, this is rap right here.
Yeah. Now
I could
see,
listen to that kind of stuff all day.
that's where J. Cole and Wale, it was on Wale's album. I want to say it was on More About Nothing, or it was either More About Nothing or Attention Deficit, but it was a song called Beautiful Bliss where they were going back and forth. But that was kind of where J. Cole started his feature run, like where he was going and killing people on their own song. I felt like it was slightly rude. I'm like, because he went a couple extra bars, like he was going off, and then the beats dropped and he's still going. So Wale had to come back in and because Wale had a great verse himself, and then J. Cole came on, killed it, and then Wale came back and followed up to stand strong. But yeah, I my bad. I didn't want to, but yeah, Wale is they rap though. That's the thing. It is rap. They're J. Cole technically. I think the only thing with J. Cole is like I was saying prior when it does come to mixed rappers, or it just kind of has a different feel for the culture, and I think where they're necessarily trying to fit into the narrative, and not even to the narrative, but I do feel like there are certain times where the audience themselves, outside of just the Black community, that's where they have their influence in terms of seeing themselves in the rapper. So the Tiger Woods effect. So I think that was probably one of the only reasons why, numbers wise, J. Cole kind of gets a bump ahead of Wale, because they were both putting out very great music at the time. Sample had like subject matter, everything. And just in terms of Wale, he rapped, he was, kind of easy. He was revealing, just how he dealt with girls at that age, and just just different life experience, things that you're running into as you're growing up. And that's kind of more what hip hop is for young kids. Like, they're looking for direction, and these are some of the only role models that they have. So when you're hearing them talk about some of their struggles dealing with girls, whether it be in a breakup or their first time trying to get a kiss or something like that, that's when you're most connecting with them.
But not to cut you off, and not to make this about Wale, I was riding along one day and I heard a Wale track. And this particular Wale track, you probably would know it by name. I can't remember the name of it, but he was actually more like getting this grown man on. It was more of a track about some woman. It was really clever. I can't remember if the name of the track was Honey or something. It was some woman.
Matrimony.
I don't know if it was Matrimony.
That was one he had with Usher.
No. It was just, I don't think
just Wale.
I don't think he had a co-star. I think it was just him on this. But it was just outrageous, and it was clearly a grown man kind of thing, where I thought that the women would really gravitate to it.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name of it. I know you've heard it. But yeah, you might have to make me a best of Wale.
Oh yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, now Wale got some, and that's so. Just back to it, because I do think, like, you remember when they were having verses.
Yeah.
I feel like if you were to put Wale versus J. Cole, Wale, I feel, would mop the floor with J. Cole on a song, not necessarily rapping, but just song for song. Who has the more songs that are like recognizable and impactful to the culture? I feel like Wale has a leg up on J. Cole when it comes to that, because he's, to me, more culturally tapped in. Like, J. Cole he stays true to the game of hip hop. Like, and I think that's where things kind of get blurred. Like, hip hop wise, nobody's really messing with J. Cole because technically he's so talented though. Like the words he uses and the difference of flows that he so he's like,
And that's what I
amazing.
liked about him on, I think it's called My Boy. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Nah, I'm pretty sure. Let me just make sure because I do know they have. I know I'm can hear the song like my boy, my boy.
Yeah. What I pointed out to my son was that I really appreciated what Jay did with his flow change. And a lot of people are not able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. J. Cole.
Now,
We done. We
this is
did
what
get
this is
it.
what I wanted to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we probably coming up on time. We definitely are coming up on time. One of the things that, and I know you might have to address this because I'm sure there's a lot to it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
probably not a simple answer. I I wonder why Kendrick felt like he needed to do that because you would think that from a business standpoint, the big three would have been a lucrative thing because if you remember going back maybe 10 or 15 years, I can't believe it's been that long. If
Mm-hmm.
you remember Jay-Z, Drake, Kanye, and I think Lil Wayne was a part of the clique,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I don't know if anybody challenged them for saying that they were the clique, but it's interesting that Drake was a part of that. And now if I'm hearing you right, it was Drake that sounded off and said, okay, now we're the big three.
No, that was J. Cole.
Oh, J. Cole was the one
J.
who
Cole was the one who said it.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
J. Cole said it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Interesting. Okay.
And so that's kind of where, because just back to where we were at, because I know we did get on a tangent talking about this. So J. Cole had dropped the album Might Delete Later. That was the name of the album. At the end of it, he had dropped and that was where he was talking about the discography. So that's kind of how we got off to the tangent. He ended up deleting the diss track to Kendrick. And really, back to that, I don't feel like J. Cole was the person who could call out Kendrick's discography when it comes to album wise. Like I do think J. Cole is a phenomenal rapper, but when it does come to his albums, and it's mainly because of who Kendrick represents. Like Kendrick is someone who saw the ghetto from, I wouldn't say a safe place, but a vulnerable place. Like, he wasn't one of the gangsters trying to do the drive-bys. He was one experiencing the turmoil that was a result of those drive-bys and gang violence areas. So when we were talking about narrative in hip hop, that's where Kendrick is important and why his music resonates with so many people in different hoods, because you're not, a lot of people aren't the ones who are being the gangsters and things like that, but they're witnessing it and it's affecting them in their day-to-day lives. And with J. Cole, I just feel like he's pure hip hop. Like his whole thing is like, I'm the best rapper, and that's kind of what what he sticks to. And I respect it. I respect him for that, and I don't have any problem with him saying he's the best rapper because technically he does. He's rapping the best. So
Yeah, and you're supposed to say that, right? I
right, and
mean,
exactly going to
going
the
back to
whole
going back to
spirit.
basketball, these guys who are playing the game now, you'd be ludicrous to say the next guy is better than
Better
you if you
than
feel you are, you
right,
know?
real competitive. So
Yeah.
but that's why people were very shocked when he apologized and took the song down from that was dissing Kendrick. So now when you're looking at it from like a score perspective, you had I wouldn't really call a first person shooter as like a shot like that first shot from Kendrick. Then J. Cole was the first to respond. So right now, at this point, only Kendrick and J. Cole had dropped music, but people are still waiting on Drake's response. But people were saying, oh, since J. Cole came out, people were like, oh, Kendrick, you got to go back at J. Cole. So they were looking for Kendrick to come again, but then J. Cole apologized. So now it's still just Kendrick, and now it's just Kendrick and Drake. Then let's see. After that, Drake had leaked his diss track to Kendrick Lamar, and that first diss was called. It wasn't Taylor Made was the second one. The first one called Push Ups. Push Ups. So, and that one was a pretty good song. But he was once again that's when Drake decided to go at everyone who was dissing him on that album.
Right.
That we don't trust you.
Right.
So right now we have a direct shot at Drake and a kind of an indirect shot at Kendrick, because he was just kind of saying some things like, and he was alluding to the fact that Kendrick has to split all of his earnings with his record label, which at that point he was already independent. So I didn't really understand that. It was more looking like I didn't really know exactly what Drake was going to say about Kendrick. So, I was like, get at him, do what you got to do. But to me, that first Drake that came from Drake was more of a shot at everyone else, or it did more damage. And my thing is, if you're in a battle, and that's why I've been saying the whole time, I felt like Drake was underestimating Kendrick in terms of how he was releasing, because he had dropped the first one, which you needed to address Kendrick directly, from my opinion, from a competitive stance. Nobody else was really going at you, but so Drake had dropped Push Ups, and then Rick Ross had responded to something that Drake had said in his album. So, or on his first initial diss. So that kind of stopped Drake's initial momentum from Push Ups, because Push Ups was doing kind of numbers, but then Rick Ross dropped like actually a few hours later. It wasn't even like a whole day later. So he came right back. He was like, and everybody was like, oh man, everyone was impressed with the speed and of how he came back. And that one was called Champagne Memories. And at that point, Ross was just kind of saying, yo, you came in and got all the all your cool points from these black rappers, and now you're up and you're not sharing the love and something to that sentiment. I'm just paraphrasing. He was referring to Drake as a white boy and all of this stuff. So that started coming, and the thing with that was, since it had leaked, it was hard to say if it was real or not. So I was really under the impression, I was like, it's kind of sounded a little bit AI. It sounded like a little AI at first, just because when I'm used to Drake writing, because Drake is one of the talent. Like, don't get him wrong, even if you win, lose, or draw, he's still one of the most talented artists that we know of. And so when I'm listening, I'm like, I don't got no. It didn't have a Drake feel to it, because a lot of times when Drake's about to diss you, then he's speaking at the beginning of it. He's like, just like, you got me doing this. I don't even want. So that's kind of more Drake's vibe.
Right.
So it didn't really feel like your typical Drake song. And since it was leaked, I was like, nah, I don't believe that it was real. But then after a while, then people were like, okay, or he released it officially. And then he had dropped another song where he did use AI. He used the fake Tupac voice, and then the fake Snoop Dogg voice, and then he rapped the third verse on his regular voice, and that one was called Tailor Made. And so that one was pretty impactful. Like, some people didn't like the fact that he used the AI. Some people thought it was really clever. For me, I was still like, you're not going at, like, Kendrick is a problem at this point, and it's like you're not. It was like everybody was kind of like half jabbing at this point. So Kendrick he kind of threw like a quick jab. J. Cole threw a quick jab. Then Drake. So it's just like jab, 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 and then finally, what was the next song that that Kendrick dropped? I want to say he dropped 616 in LA, which is like the way he did that was a way that Drake normally released like timestamp songs, so he'll be like 8 a.m. in Dallas. I don't know if that's the 9 a.m. in Dallas, something like that. But he'll do just little timestamps. So it was kind of like a Drake this. But then there was so many layers to just the naming, the sampling. So when you really look into how much thought went into that diss track, you're like, okay, now this is a pretty good diss. And it's I don't know if he did any. Hold on, let me just. I don't know if what exactly.
So while you're looking at that, and then I've got to hop in like five.
Yeah, no, I already know we're over.
Yeah. So, but this was good. So altogether, as far as this back and forth, how many tracks has Kendrick dropped versus Drake? Because Drake dropped what, 3?
I did. I forgot one. It was Euphoria.
Okay.
Euphoria came after Tailor Made. So he had so it went like that, Kendrick, Push Ups, Drake, Euphoria, Kendrick, then no, hold on. It was like that, Kendrick, Push Ups, Drake, Tailor Made, Drake, then Euphoria, Kendrick, which was a song after Push Ups and before 616. And that one was actually that one was good. I liked Euphoria. Then Kendrick came back and dropped 616 in LA. Then Drake came back with the Family Matters, which he was fine. Like that was like 7.5 minutes long. But once again, I think if he was rapping like that and went directly at solely at Kendrick, I think he would have won. But he kind of more was dissing the Weeknd on that. He was dissing he still I think might have had some words for Metro, and so he was all over the place and who he had to attack. And it's like then right after he dropped that, a few hours later, Kendrick dropped Meet the Grams, which kind of put a whole damper on Drake's last release. And then he came and dropped the Not Like Us, which that's the song that started going viral. And then Drake he had finally finished up with the Heart Part 6, where he that's the series, a couple of series of songs that Kendrick has called the Heart. Like he has the Heart Part 1 through 5, so kind of went back into that. So yeah, all together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tracks between them.
So 5. What Kendrick put out 5 of those?
Yeah, well, if you count the like that was just a feature, but then he had the Euphoria, 616, Meet the Grams, and Not Like Us. So he had 4, and Drake had Push Ups, Tailor Made, Family Matters, and the Heart Part 6. So yeah, 4 and 4 actually.
Really? I don't know why it seemed like Kendrick dropped more than him. You said
because of the way he was dropping. It was the way he was dropping.
Okay.
So.
Huh. That takes a different that puts a different light on it. Yeah. Because for some reason, maybe I still haven't heard one of Drake's. Maybe that's what happened.
You might not have heard the last one. The Heart Part 6, the one that came out after Not Like Us.
Is that the one where he responds to the Harvey Weinstein allegation?
Mm-hmm.
I did hear that one. Okay. Maybe I heard them all, but if it's actually 4 a piece, then I guess Kendrick has a slight edge, because
that's where a lot of people left it at
because of that. Because see, here's the thing. I think and I said this to my son, I think that Drake didn't properly deal with his last track, he didn't properly deal with what was
Dropped
said.
the ball.
He,
He
he,
dropped the
he
ball.
yeah, he dropped the ball. He didn't. Those were some heavy allegations,
Yeah.
and he was way too soft in his response.
I agree.
Yeah, so I'm glad we fleshed that out. So I guess I have to give that edge to Kendrick now that I got a better understanding.
Yeah.
Um,
People were saying he was gonna come, or people were anticipating. But I don't know if you heard, one of Drake's security guards got shot at his place. So that's where I haven't had too much time to keep up with all of the news coming out
yeah, that's not good though.
about it. Yeah. So, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't exactly know the details of that. But yeah, so I think that kind of stopped Drake's response. Not so I don't believe it came from Kendrick. It could have came from someone else he dissed on one of those tracks. But I'm not here to speculate but I definitely think that made that paused his response. I mean, I feel like they'll continue to take shots at each other for the foreseeable future when they rap, but we'll see.
But I think it was important for Judge Mathis to address what ended up happening because at the end of the day, rap beef and battle rapping is how, as we talked about the last time, is how hip hop started. But I think that when it devolves into multimillionaires trying to do forever harm, then that's we didn't drop the ball because we can look in so many different other arenas where even if we go into politics where people appear to be the biggest of enemies, but at the end of the day, they're not going to do that to each other
Mm.
because we know in the back rooms they're getting together. You see what I'm saying? So out front, they're putting on this again, going back to the propaganda thing, putting a bow on all of this, going back to the propaganda thing, out front, they appear to be greatest of enemies.
Mm.
But in the back room at Jekyll Island, they're meeting.
Right. I see. I see.
So I'm gonna let you get the last word, and then I got a hop.
Okay, yeah. I think this was I think we finally got ourselves one that can last. We can put this out. I think the quality is good. We went with a service this time instead of trying to do things through the freehand way. Thank you everyone who has tuned in. I do see we have one live viewer, probably hey dad or someone who's watching. But no, this was a great stream. We had a great conversation this time. I almost ain't have enough energy trying to get things working on the computer, but I took a quick bite to eat before we hopped on, so I was able to power through. Thank you, Frank, for coming on and chatting with me. To everyone watching, thank you for joining us. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Do us a favor. We want to challenge if you see this video and we don't have 5 likes yet, please just throw a like on there, leave a comment, share this with anyone who you feel may enjoy this conversation. We want to continue to just keep this as open dialogue. If you have any input, please leave it down in the comments. We appreciate everyone who's continuing to. This is episode 5, and we're getting better every single time for sure.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, Frank, once again. And you guys have a great night. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Let's end this.
All right, man. I appreciate